Hey guys, picture this. It's a crisp autumn evening in 1692 Salem Village. The wind's howling like your Aunt Bertha after one too many sherries, and somewhere in the distance, someone's goat is baying like it's auditioning for a horror movie. In just 10 seconds, you're about to learn why you wouldn't last through a witch trial in Puritan America. So buckle up, Buttercup. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. Imagine being hauled out of your warm bed at the crack of dawn by burly townsmen who look like they've been gargling vinegar all morning. You're in your night clothes, still clutching your half-eaten loaf of rye bread, and you're utterly bewildered. Yesterday, you were just Jane Doe, busy trying to churn butter without losing a finger. Today, you're accused of consorting with the devil. Congratulations, you've just won the worst lottery imaginable. It all starts with gossip. Innocent chit-chat around the well quickly morphs into a crescendo of finger-pointing. Did you see her prance in that strange dance? She must be a witch, someone whispers. Before you can say blasphemy, the local magistrate is scribbling your name in the Book of Damned. Your neighbors, once friendly faces, now stare at you with suspicion so thick you could cut it with your butter knife. Next, they drag you into the meeting house, a cold, drafty building that smells faintly of stale cider and fear. The magistrate glowers at you from a raised platform, his powdered wig perched precariously, as if it might topple off at the slightest sneeze. Behind him sit a panel of stern-faced accusers who eagerly await your confession, any confession, in exchange for a quieter roasting next week. The townspeople gape, hanging on every word, as though your trial is the latest episode of their favorite tragedy series. And then comes the test, dunking. Yes, you heard that right. They tie your hands behind your back, bind your feet together, and lower you into the icy pond. If you float, obviously you're rejecting baptism waters and embracing the devil instead. Bummer for you. If you sink, you'll drown. It's a lose-lose scenario that Puritan logic somehow believed was divinely ordained justice. Desperate, your lungs scream for air, and your heart pounds like a jackhammer as you bob on the surface, a living, gasping testament to human absurdity. But let's say by some miracle you survive the dunking without bobbing like an apple in a barrel. You're hauled back onto land, shivering so violently your teeth chatter a chorus of "Save me." They wrap you in a damp blanket and cart you off to the jail cell, a dank, dark hole with a dirt floor and enough mice to form their own union. You huddle in the corner, counting the minutes until your next hearing, every creak of the floorboard sending jolts of terror through your spine. Days blur into nights. You're fed stale cornmeal mush once a day if the jailer remembers to show up. Sleep is a stranger chased away by nightmares of spectral evidence. Visions the afflicted girls claim they see. Your own shadow seems to morph into horned shapes on the wall. Solitude gnaws at your sanity. You start talking to the rats, bargaining with them for company in exchange for crumbs. When your trial finally begins, it's nothing like the courtroom drama you've seen in plays. There are no George Clooney's pacing, no triumphant revelations. Instead, it's a chaotic free-for-all, where spectral testimonies hold more weight than physical proof. The magistrate nods solemnly as the accusers describe seeing your spirit pinch them or whisper curses. You plead innocence, but who's listening? The jury, composed of your neighbors, has already decided you're guilty. They scribble on their sheets as if they're filling out shopping lists. One witch, still smells like rye. Your defense attorney is about as useful as a sieve in a rainstorm. He whispers legal jargon you barely understand, offering advice like, "Don't curse at the court," as though you had the luxury to politely refuse the devil's handshake. Every word you utter is twisted, every gesture becomes damning evidence. The crowd mutters in approval when the verdict is read, guilty. A collective exhalation of relief echoes through the meeting house. They've saved their village from evil. At least that's what they tell themselves. The final act is swift. You're led to the gallows in the village square, the sun glaring down like an omniscient witness. The noose is looped around your neck, its rough fibers scrape your skin, reminding you that justice often tastes like cold death. A small platform tilts away beneath your feet, and suddenly you're falling. Your last vision, a blurred montage of horrified onlookers, the flutter of a raven's wing, the shocking finality of a snapped neck. But here's the kicker. You won't be remembered as an innocent victim of hysteria. Instead, you become the cautionary tale whispered in hushed-toned sermons. Let not the devil deceive thee, lest thou end like Jane Doe. Your name etched in grim records, your story twisted into moralizing parables, your death justified by a community, desperate for scapegoats. In the end, the Puritan witch trial is less about justice and more about collective paranoia, a terrifying reminder that when fear reigns, reason bows out the back door. So next time you think you can handle a little medieval drama, remember this. In Puritan America, you wouldn't stand a ghost of a chance, and as for me, I'll be right here, sipping my tea, marveling at how we once decided dunking people in a pond was a sound legal precedent. Talk about going off the deep end, literally. You wake before dawn again, to the same rat-chittering lullaby and the damp smell of mold, seeping through wooden planks. Today's docket reads like a brutal theatrical season. 6 more accused will face examination, and you're on display alongside them like a particularly grotesque exhibit at a traveling sideshow. No curtain call, no applause, just a cold stare of Puritan righteousness and the unflinching glare of neighbors convinced that God's wrath has chosen flesh to expose. They drag you from your cell and down a narrow hallway where the floorboards groan under the weight of collective judgment. The magistrate's clerk squints at a sheaf of parchment, as if reading your life sentence for the first time. Elizabeth Proctor, it says, Jessica Bishop, Martha Corey, and a half-dozen others whose desperate faces twist in silent prayer. You exchange fleeting glances, fragments of solidarity in an ocean of despair, before the jailer shoves you forward into the meeting house once more. Inside, the air is thick with incense and panic. The afflicted girls, teenagers fueled by hysteria and half-remembered folk tales, sit on a raised bench whispering to one another like conspirators in a dark comedy. Their eyes flick to you, unblinking as they whisper, "There she is," or "That's the one who scratched my arm." Scratch marks you don't remember making. How convenient, then, that the devil's work can be read in any slight bruise or fleck of mud. When you step onto the platform, the magistrate leans forward, steepling his fingers. "Speak the truth," he intones, voice booming through the rafters. "Confess your dealings with Satan, or deny him no longer." Deny him no longer? You're not sure which option kills you faster, the noose or the bone-chilling isolation of innocence unacknowledged. They call the first witness, a farmer's wife who claims she awoke to find you standing at the foot of her bed, whispering curses into the wind. She stares at you with righteous indignation, as though you personally summoned every flea in her barn to provoke her nightly torment. Next, a local miller swears he saw your spirit riding his horse backward through the woods, stamping circles of death into his fields. You bite your lip to keep from roaring laughter. If you couldn't laugh in this absurd theater, you'd seize up completely. Then they produce the witch cake, a clump of rye meal mixed with your supposed urine, baked by the village baker under the watchful eye of 2 ministers. Legend holds that feeding this concoction to a dog will cause the afflicted to writhe and reveal their tormentors. You cringe at the thought, your bodily fluids roasted like some grotesque souffle and fed to Fido for divine confirmation. The dog, convinced it's snack time, gobbles it down and promptly falls asleep. Silence. No spectral howling, no convulsions, just a sated canine napping on wooden planks. The jury frowns. A sleeping dog is obviously proof of demonic influence. Case closed. You stand mute, exhausted by insult upon insult. When it's your turn to speak, your voice cracks. "I am no witch. I am a simple woman who churns butter, bakes bread, and tends to her children." Your words float upward, swallowed by the collective gasp of a congregation too eager to hear guilt. "Are you the woman who refused to sell your cow's milk to Goodwife Hale?" The magistrate presses. "Did you not call her a gossip and a fool?" You swallow. Yes, you did. It's a common squabble over butter churners, not a covenant with Lucifer. But in this fever dream, you piece yourself into a willing emissary of evil for saying, "Her tongue is sharper than a serpent's fang." At midday, they bring out the infamous touch test. The afflicted girls, clothed in white as if they're angels, rather than breathless hysterics, file past you. When one collapses at your mere proximity, an orchestrated feint, you suspect, the crowd erupts. "She knew your touch," they cry. "See how her spirit recoils?" It's performance art with stakes of life and death. You grit your teeth, smile politely at the girl, and step aside. Another life thread snipped. Lunchtime, if you can call a hunk of stale bread and thin broth lunch, is served in silence. You sit on a plank bench between two women so gaunt they could slip through the bars. They whisper rumors. Martha Corey's fingers turned blue last night, as if ice water ran through her veins. John Proctor's farmhand swears he heard Elizabeth Proctor chatting merrily with someone named Old Scratch. You nod along, too famished to care whether you're feeding gossip or hope. Hunger starves your dignity. The afternoon brings cross-examination. They trot out a discredited midwife who once claimed to see familiars, animal companions of the devil, in her cottage. She points at you. That cat behind yon hearth was hers. You look at the hearth. It's empty. But she gestures emphatically, eyes wild. I saw it slink away, its eyes glowing red. The jury leans in, salivating over every tale of spectral animal companions. In this village, imagination is power, and power is conviction. Desperate, you consider confessing. A perfunctory, yes, I sold my soul for ill-gotten butter prices, might buy you a reprieve, a last-minute pardon. But you also know that confession is a one-way ticket. The lips that utter Satan's name must dance for him forever. Better the gallows than eternal damnation. You swallow, wetting dry lips and mouth only. I am innocent. They place you in prayer posture, bound at the wrists and ankles, and leave you in the meeting house overnight for reflection. The floor is littered with straw. The air is thick with candle soot. Alone, you stare at the flickering flame, willing it to leap from the candlestick, set this whole madhouse ablaze, and usher insanity. Instead, the flame flickers and dies. Night deepens, and your fellow prisoners begin to stir. A young mother cradles her wailing infant, tears slick on her cheeks. A bedraggled schoolteacher rocks back and forth, muttering psalms to ward off nightmares. You realize you are part of a macabre congregation, bound not by faith but by fear. The walls seem to lean in, pressing against your ribcage, a reminder that no one here will save you. Sleep drifts in unwanted snippets, dreams of waterlogged corpses floating in that pond, of robed women dancing around bonfires, of spectral fingers tracing your name in the frost. You jolt awake, heart pounding like a blacksmith's hammer, gasping for breath in a midnight concert of rattling chains and whimpers. Dawn arrives in pale silence. The jailer appears with a pot of gruel and a cup of water that tastes of iron. Eat, he says, voice flat. Your trial continues. You spoon the muddy broth into your mouth, each gulp a nail hammered deeper into your resolve. Today's session is the final one. They say the court must close before All Hallows, to keep winter's chill from freezing justice itself. They read through the list of charges: spectral assault, consorting with familiars, uttering blasphemies, causing fits by bewitchment. Each charge feels like a dagger slipped between ribs. The jury files back in. The foreman, a button-nosed butcher, clears his throat. We find the accused guilty of high witchery. The words reverberate off the walls, a death knell as real as any bell tolling over a grave. You stand still as though petrified while the verdict sinks in. You wanted innocence, they delivered guilt. They escort you outside to stand before the pillory for a moment's disgrace, then lead you to the scaffold beyond the village green. The noose awaits, rough and unyielding. You step forward, legs trembling as though sewn from jam. A hush falls over the crowd. No more shrieks, no triumphant cries. Even fear can tire of its own performance. They slip the noose over your head. You glance down at your hands, once capable of kneading dough, patting loose hair into braids, caressing your child's cheek. Now bound, trembling, they're called instruments of the devil. You close your eyes, imagining a world beyond this square. A world where logic triumphs, where neighbors share bread instead of suspicion. Then the platform tilts, and gravity claims you as its own. The last thing you feel is the tight coil against your neck, an embrace colder than any pond or prison cell. The crowd exhales. Justice, they tell themselves, has been served. And as your vision fades to black, you wonder, in a world so quick to see monsters, was the only true horror the darkness in their own hearts? You are dead, or at least the village says you are. Your name's been scratched off the rolls, your body dumped in an unmarked pit outside the consecrated graveyard, because of course witches don't get proper Christian burials. No mourners, no bells, just the crows circling overhead and the sound of dirt thudding against pine. But your story doesn't end there, not really. Because in Puritan America, the dead don't get to rest, especially not the accused. You live on, grotesquely immortalized in rumor and firebrand sermons. Your sins are retold weekly from pulpits carved by men whose own pride reeks louder than brimstone. You are now part of a living folklore machine, a cautionary tale used to terrify children into silence and submission. Somewhere, a pastor points at your name and declares, "This is what comes of women who read too much, who speak too boldly, who bake with too much nutmeg." And if you think the horror of your death was the climax, think again, because now we turn to what happens next in the town of Salem. And let me tell you, it gets worse. You see, it wasn't just you. The noose didn't stop with one neck. Within weeks, more are accused, more are sentenced. Pregnant women, blind old men, children. The accusations spiral like a drunk carpenter building a staircase, lopsided, chaotic, and leading straight into the abyss. Why stop at one devil when there are dozens lurking behind every butter churn and sack of flour? The teenage accusers grow bolder, their stories more theatrical. "I saw her specter climbing the rafters like a cat. She summoned a yellow bird that whispered curses in Latin. She turned into smoke and flew through my window." By now, it's less about guilt and more about spectacle. Think early reality television, but with actual executions instead of awkward confessionals. And the townsfolk, they lap it up. The more outlandish, the more they believe. A girl faints, witchcraft, a boy stubs his toe, demonic interference. The town becomes a pressure cooker of moral panic. Every knock at the door feels like the beginning of your own trial. Wives eye their husbands warily. Children are coached on what to say should the magistrates arrive. Gossip turns weaponized, each whispered rumor a match struck near a powder keg. You can't smile too wide or frown too deeply or speak too cleverly. Neutrality is suspicious. Silence is seditious. Existence itself becomes dangerous. And just when it seems the town might devour itself entirely, the higher courts step in. The governor, finally alarmed that the witch craze has started targeting members of the landed gentry, people with money and titles, which naturally makes their accusations suddenly troubling, puts an end to the madness. The court of Oyer and Terminer is dissolved. New rules are set. Spectral evidence is banned, which, translated from legalese, means, oh wait, maybe basing trials on nightmares wasn't very solid jurisprudence. But here's the kicker. No apologies. No grand reckoning. No village-wide sobbing session in which they admit they collectively lost their minds and maybe, just maybe, burned innocent people for being weird, mouthy, or unlucky. At best, they offer the lukewarm, well, mistakes were made, and then go right back to church. And the survivors? The ones who were imprisoned but not executed? They return to ruined homes, grieving families, and a community that sees them as suspicious shadows. Jobs are lost. Children grow up haunted. Some go mad. Some disappear. No one escapes untouched. Take Giles Corey, for instance. Refused to enter a plea. Knew the trial was rigged, so they crushed him, literally, with stones. They placed boards on his chest and added heavy rocks, one at a time, demanding he plead or perish. His only response? More weight. A final act of defiance that the town now treats like a spooky anecdote, ignoring the fact that they slowly murdered a man because he dared not play their crooked game. Or how about Sarah Good, hanged while clutching her baby? The child died in prison, starved. Her final words to her accusers were a curse. "God will give you blood to drink." A line so metal it could be the title of a doom metal album. And incidentally, not far off from what actually happened. Many of her accusers met bitter early deaths, plagued by guilt and illness. But no redemption arc here, just quiet, awkward deaths tucked away in church records. And don't forget the aftermath for the children, the girls who started it all. Some vanish from records. One ends up in a brothel. One begs forgiveness decades later. Another lives quietly, refusing to speak of the trials ever again. Trauma echoes through their lives like footsteps in an empty hall. They may have cried witch first, but the system did the rest. And the town of Salem? Well, it eventually grows, thrives even. By the 18th century, it becomes a bustling harbor town. People come and go. They build new meeting houses, paint over old signs, rename streets, but the shadow remains. Salem becomes a name synonymous with hysteria, with injustice, with an entire population that saw the devil in every shadow and justice in every hanging. Of course, centuries later, it all becomes quaint and profitable. The same town that once burned you now sells fridge magnets of witches. There are ghost tours, souvenir shops, and witch museums staffed by employees in velvet capes and theatrical eyeliner. What was once a sight of terror is now kitsch. Your story becomes a Halloween costume, your death a punchline on postcards. And sure, modern people might sigh, how barbaric they were back then. But peel back the layers, and you'll still find it. Fear wrapped in righteousness, hysteria given a halo. The tools have changed, the stage is digital now, but the instinct to judge, to condemn, to exile, that part is evergreen. So, no, you wouldn't last through a witch trial in Puritan America, not because you're weak or loud or non-conforming, but because the rules were never meant to protect you. The moment fear entered the room, truth went out the window, and you were already standing at the gallows. And if you're sitting there thinking, that couldn't happen today, then I have a haunted meeting house to sell you, complete with period-accurate nooses and fully functioning moral panic. Let's say, by some miracle, twist of fate, or cosmic glitch, you survived. Maybe you were released when the trials collapsed. Maybe your neighbors decided you were too dull to be a proper witch. Maybe your jailer took pity on you and quietly unlocked your cell before the paperwork came through. Either way, you've lived, but survived is a generous word. Because surviving a Puritan witch trial isn't like walking away from a bad haircut or an awkward dinner with your in-laws. No one throws you a party. There are no welcome back parades or apology cakes from the magistrate. There's just quiet. A heavy, stiff, suspicious kind of quiet. The kind you feel deep in your bones, like the cold of a cellar that's never seen sunlight. You return home, if it's still there. If the town hasn't sold your property or ransacked it looking for witch tools, read your sewing needles and an unusually friendly cat. The front door creaks as you push it open. Dust, silence, half-rotted bread on the shelf, rats in the chimney, and the unmistakable scent of abandonment. Everything familiar feels hollow now, like your life's been emptied out and repackaged into something you no longer recognize. The neighbors avoid you. Children stare, wide-eyed. One kid whispers that your shadow moves differently. Another swears you made their goat walk backwards. No one corrects them, no one defends you. You might be free, but you're radioactive, tainted. You walk through the town square like a ghost, seen but not spoken to. And God help you if you try to resume a normal life. Try buying flour from the miller. He'll weigh it twice, then short you a handful, just in case. Try attending church and people slide down the pew like you've got the plague. You sing hymns alone, your voice echoing awkwardly in the rafters while the rest of the congregation mumbles in tight-lipped solidarity. The women who once shared herbs with you now clutch their shawls tighter. The men who once borrowed your ladder now won't look you in the eye. If you're lucky, you'll become a local oddity, the harmless kind of cursed. If you're unlucky, the whispers never stop, and someone lights another match. Now imagine you're a man who was accused. Think you'll fare better? Not a chance. If anything, it's worse. Because now, on top of being a supposed devil's pawn, you're seen as weak, fragile, unmanly. How could he be bewitched? They scoff behind their tankards. Real men aren't lured by demons. You lose your land, your standing, your legacy, maybe your family too. Who wants to be known as the wife or a child of that guy? And what if you confess to save your life? That's the real joke. Because you're not off the hook. You're now both alive and condemned. A living confession is a permanent stain. You'll be asked to name others, to point fingers, to spread the rot. Your survival hinges on throwing someone else into the fire, like some medieval reality show where the price of immunity is treachery. Even if you refuse to name names, you still wear the scarlet W. The whispers follow you like a second shadow. There goes the witch who gave in, they'll say. She may be breathing, but she's marked. And you can't ever wash it off. Not with prayer, not with time, not even with death. Your soul is a permanent topic of debate in every Sunday sermon for the next 50 years. And if you think this fever burned out quickly, think again. Sure, the Salem witch trials technically ended in 1693, but the aftershocks lasted for decades. Some families spent generations trying to clear their relatives' names. Some never succeeded. Others quietly changed their last names, moved towns, disappeared into the wilderness, rather than live under suspicion forever. Meanwhile, the ones who started it all, the accusers, most faced no consequences. Some even married well. Others became respected church members, because justice in these stories isn't a scale. It's a hammer, and it always seems to fall on the people with the softest voices and the weakest defenses. So no, you wouldn't last through a witch trial in Puritan America, not because you're evil or dramatic or unusually fond of herbs, but because surviving means being forgotten, or worse, remembered in the wrong way. History doesn't record your real self. It records the version someone else needed you to be. A villain, a witch, a lesson. Centuries later, people will look back and say, "Can you believe they actually thought someone could curse crops with a glance?" They'll chuckle in modern irony, sipping lattes while walking past Salem souvenir stands. They'll buy novelty socks with witches on broomsticks and attend haunted house tours in buildings where real people once screamed. They'll call it hysteria, as if it were a passing sickness, as if it didn't live on. Because here's the thing, witch trials were never about witches. They were about fear, power, control. They were about punishing people who didn't fit in, who said too much or too little, who were too poor, too old, too strange, too foreign, too female, too loud, too something. Witch hunts just gave it a name. And if you think we've left all that behind, you haven't been paying attention. Because every time a crowd forms around someone different, every time rumor outweighs reason, every time fear is weaponized for convenience, there it is again, the trial, the platform, the rope. The witch is just a symbol, but the noose is always real. So as you blow out your candle tonight and wrap yourself in your warm, safe blanket, remember this. The world you live in might be brighter, louder, and more technically advanced, but it still knows how to find its witches. Sleep tight. Imagine waking up underground, choking on dust, chained at the ankle to a man who died yesterday and no one's removed him yet. Your lungs are full of metallic air, your hands are bleeding, and the sun? You haven't seen that in 3 months. Welcome to your new job as an expendable, half-naked labor unit in an ancient Roman mine. You wanted history? You got it, in all its brutal, suffocating, back-breaking glory. Congratulations, citizen. Or perhaps I should say, felicitor, service. Because if you've landed in a Roman mine, there's a 99% chance you're not enjoying the benefits of the Republic or Empire. You're not sipping wine in a bathhouse. You're not reading scrolls in a portico. You're not debating philosophy in a toga. You are property. You are shackled. You are probably shirtless, starving, and covered in bruises. You are what Rome calls a damnatus ad metalla, condemned to the mines. And let's be clear, this isn't some casual part-time gig where you clock in, do a little light pickaxe work, and head home for some olives. No, this is full-time, full hell, full-body destruction. You're either a prisoner of war, a slave from the provinces, or someone who annoyed the wrong magistrate. Maybe you were caught stealing bread. Maybe you practiced Christianity before it was cool. Maybe you just had bad luck. Doesn't matter. You're here now. The mine? It's not what you're picturing. There are no carts on rails, no safety helmets, no little lamps on your head. There's darkness, damp stone, collapsing ceilings, and shafts so narrow you have to crawl into them like a cockroach. The only light comes from oil lamps that smoke and sputter, giving just enough glow to see the horror in front of you, but never enough to see the end of the tunnel. You're awakened before dawn, if you slept at all. It's hard to rest when your bed is cold rock and your pillow is your own arm. The overseer, a former soldier who traded decency for a whip, screams in Latin and jabs you with a rod. Get up, move, work. Your body aches, your legs shake, and your back feels like it's being held together by spite. But there's no choice. You shuffle toward the shaft like a condemned ghost. You descend into the mine via a rope ladder, slick with sweat and grime. If you fall, no one stops to help. The last guy who slipped broke both legs and was dragged into a corner to rest, which in mining terms means die slowly while someone takes your spot. Down you go, 30, 40, 50 meters into the earth. The temperature drops, the air thickens, the silence deepens, then the coughing begins. Everyone coughs, everyone wheezes, the dust gets in your nose, your throat, your lungs, your soul. Your job today is ore extraction. You get a hammer, if you're lucky, and a chisel. Your task is to chip silver, gold, copper, or lead from the rock face. Lead is the worst. You inhale its poison with every breath. Silver might make emperors rich, but for you, it's a death sentence laced with shine. You strike the wall, over and over, arms shaking, sweat dripping into your eyes. When the chunk finally falls, it lands on your foot. You don't scream. Screaming wastes energy. There's no conversation down here. only grunts, curses, and the rhythmic clink-clink of iron on stone. The man next to you hasn't spoken since last week. His fingers are twisted. You think his name was Diodorus. You think he's still alive. The air is a toxic soup of dust and smoke. There's no ventilation, unless you count the occasional shaft where some poor teenager is assigned to wave a fan made from palm leaves. He's as exhausted as you are, and half the time he faints mid-shift. Some of the larger mines use bellows, but it just blows the poison deeper in. Thirst gnaws at you constantly. There's water, but it's warm, stale, and probably contaminated. You drink it anyway. You have to. The alternative is dying of dehydration, which is popular down here. So is black lung, cave-ins, gas explosions, rock slides, and being buried alive. There's a reason they call this work mining your own grave. Lunch is a myth. If you're very lucky, someone might toss you a handful of dried beans or a crust of black bread around midday. If you're really lucky, it won't be moldy. You eat with filthy hands and then get back to work. The Romans say slaves are like tools. They work until they break and then they're replaced. You begin to believe it. Your back spasms, your fingers bleed. You're so dirty your skin looks like it belongs to a different species. Your hair is matted with grease. Your tunic, if you were issued one, is in tatters. Your body screams for rest. Too bad. The overseer walks by, swinging a cudgel like he's conducting an orchestra of misery. He spots a man slumping against a wall. One strike to the ribs, a crack, a scream. The man stands. That's the motivation system, pain or death. Some of the older miners are blind. Years of oil lamp fumes have seared their eyes. They still work, feeling the rock by touch, scraping at walls like moles. The youngest workers are children, usually slaves born into slavery. Small bodies fit into small crevices. They're forced into tiny, unstable crawl spaces with baskets tied to their backs. When they emerge, if they emerge, their knees are scraped raw and their eyes water from the dark. They don't cry. They've forgotten how. The day drags on. You try not to look at the ceiling. It might collapse. You try not to look at the floor. It's soaked with blood and sweat. You focus on your hands. Chisel, hammer, chisel, hammer. Sometimes if you're in a good mine, there are wooden supports. Most of the time, it's just raw earth and the hope that the gods are busy elsewhere. At some point, someone yells, a rumble, dust from the ceiling, then a crash, rocks tumble, screams echo. You freeze, you're alive. The guy next to you isn't. His legs pinned beneath a boulder. He begs for help. No one moves. If you help him, you'll be punished for slacking. He keeps screaming. Then he stops. At dusk, you're hauled back up the shaft. Your limbs barely respond. The ladder feels like climbing the neck of a dying god. At the top, someone splashes you with water, ostensibly to clean you, but mostly to make sure you're still breathing. You're counted, not by name, by number, like cattle, like cargo. You shuffle to the sleeping area, a row of stone alcoves or straw mats, depending on the mine's budget for human suffering. Dinner is a thin porridge. You eat with shaking hands. Someone next to you vomits. He's been coughing blood. He won't last the week. You lie down, spine pressed against cold stone, and close your eyes. Sleep doesn't come, not fully. You drift in and out, jerking awake with every cough, every creak, every rat scuttling over your feet. The nightmares don't wait until you sleep. They walk beside you now, whispering Latin curses in the dark. And you think to yourself, this is just day one, only hundreds more to go. You wake to the sound of a man choking on his own lungs. He's somewhere near your feet, spasming in the dark like a puppet yanked by angry strings. It's his third day of coughing blood. You know because you counted. You've started keeping track of things like that. Deaths, collapses, broken bones. Not out of curiosity, just something to do that reminds you you're still human. Morning doesn't arrive like it used to. There's no sunlight to tell you it's time. Only the overseer's boots scraping across the floor, his voice barking your name, or rather, your number. He swings a stick as he moves, banging it against the wall in a rhythm that's as familiar now as your own heartbeat. Today is a new assignment. Hauling slag. The chunks of discarded rock from yesterday's excavation must be carted away through a narrow shaft so claustrophobic it feels like you're being swallowed alive. You shuffle along with the others, dragging a wooden sled behind you. The sled is tied to your waist by a rope that cuts into your skin. You pass the collapsed shaft from yesterday. They haven't removed the body, just closed the tunnel with a wooden plank and carved a mark into the rock. That's how deaths are recorded here, a slash on a wall, like a tally of broken tools. No name, no lament, no burial, just another mark. As you haul the slag, you pass a group of fresh slaves just brought in from Thrace. They're young. One of them still has a look of confusion, like he's trying to remember how this all makes sense. Another is quietly weeping. The overseer notices and whips him across the back, muttering about useless animals. It's hot today. Not that the temperature underground changes much, but the ventilation's worse. Someone must have passed out at one of the bellows again. You can feel your lungs tightening like a fist, every breath laced with the scent of sulfur, sweat, and something worse, something rotting. You don't look for the source. You don't want to know. You pause to retie your rope. The overseer sees you and swings the cudgel. You flinch and grunt as it hits your shoulder. Not broken, but close. You bite your lip hard enough to taste blood. That's the rule. Silence. Make noise, and you're a problem. Problems get removed. Back to hauling. Every step sends a jolt up your spine. You can feel blisters forming on your heels. One of your toenails has gone black. You hope it falls off soon. Right now it just throbs in time with your heartbeat. Halfway through the shift, there's a commotion ahead. Someone's collapsed. Again. A young boy, maybe 10 or 11, slumped over his load. He's twitching, sunken cheeks, dry lips. The overseer sighs like someone mildly inconvenienced and drags him off the path by the arm, leaves him propped against a rock. No one else stops. Stopping means joining him. By midday, if such a term even matters underground, you're shaking. You've lost track of how long you've been dragging this sled. Your body moves on instinct, knees forward, pull, breathe, repeat. You imagine this is what being a work animal feels like, but animals probably get more rest. You reach the end of the haul path, dump the slag into a growing mountain of debris. The overseer grunts. Back again! You turn around and start the return trip. Your legs feel like they're carved from dead wood. You pass a group of men working a lower shaft. One of them is singing softly to himself, a lullaby, in Greek. He's mad, not violent, just lost somewhere inside his head. He sings every day. No one knows his name, so they call him Orpheus. It's a joke, of course. No music comes out of this place. You catch a break, if you can call it that. 15 minutes to sit before going back down. You use the time to drink warm water from a shared clay jug and press a rag to your face. It doesn't help. Your skin is covered in grime that doesn't wash off anymore. It's just part of you now, like the stink, like the scars. Back to work. This time, you're moved to the ventilation shaft. Your job is simple. Turn a crank that moves bellows, pushing stale air out and slightly less stale air in. You take over from a boy who's passed out with his eyes open. You nudge him. He doesn't move. The overseer shrugs. Toss him to the side. You crank, over and over. It's not as physically brutal as mining or hauling, but it's worse in another way. It's mindless. You're alone with your thoughts, dangerous things, thoughts. You remember your old life, if you had one. A family, a village, a river, or maybe that was someone else's memory. You're not sure anymore. You start to hum to keep time, like Orpheus. Not a song exactly, just a low, broken tune. The kind of sound that keeps the walls from closing in. By the end of the shift, your arms feel like lead. Your knuckles are raw from the rope. Your breath whistles through your teeth. When you're told to stop, you're not even sure you heard right. You keep cranking for another minute before someone pulls your hands away. Dinner is a thin lentil stew served in a cracked bowl. You huddle in a corner with your bowl, guarding it like it's gold. You eat quickly. There are no seconds. There's barely firsts. Tonight there's a new arrival, an old man from Hispania. He worked in mines before, he says. Silver mines in the mountains. This is worse, he mutters. Much worse. He scratches at the sores on his arm. They'll work us to death here. We're cheaper than tools. Someone laughs, a dry, humorless sound. Tools get sharpened, we just get replaced. You sleep fitfully again. The air's colder tonight, or maybe your body's just given up on warmth. You dream of sunlight, but wake to darkness. Someone nearby is praying softly in Hebrew. You don't know the words, but you understand the desperation. And when morning comes, if it's morning, you stand, you stretch, you limp toward the shaft again. Because that's the rule. Wake, work, suffer, sleep, repeat. You've been in the mine for 2 weeks now. You've lost weight. Your hair is matted. Your fingers are calloused and split. You haven't seen the sun in 14 days. You haven't heard a bird, or the wind, or laughter. Only coughing, only stone, only survival. And already, you know, you will never leave. The air smells worse today. That's the first thing you notice. Even before your eyes open, your nose catches it. Something acrid, like scorched metal and rotting meat. Then you remember, yesterday a shaft collapsed and took 5 men with it. They're still buried. No one's retrieved the bodies. That's not policy. That's just efficiency. You sit up slowly, every joint in your body protesting like a rusted hinge. You've slept maybe 2 hours, interrupted by coughing, whimpering, and the sound of someone muttering prayers in Latin, or maybe curses. Either way, the gods clearly aren't listening. Someone in your sleeping alcove doesn't get up. A slave from Numidia, young, maybe 17. His chest stopped rising in the night. He's pale, gray, cold. You nudge him with your foot. Nothing. The overseer walks by, glances at the body, and doesn't break stride. Another one, he mutters. Move him later. Breakfast is a fistful of barley gruel and water from a cracked amphora. You don't complain. You eat standing up, balancing your bowl in one hand and using the other to scratch at the lice in your hair. Hygiene in the mines is a luxury no one can afford. You wash when it rains. You shave when your beard catches fire from a dropped oil lamp. Your assignment today is the worst yet, fire setting. It's the Roman Empire's most beloved mining trick and one of the top 5 most insane ideas in the history of getting shiny rocks out of the ground. The concept is simple. Light a fire against the rock face, let it burn hot, then douse it with water. The rapid cooling makes the rock crack, and voila, you can extract the ore more easily, in theory. In practice, you're standing in a small, sealed tunnel filling up with smoke, watching flames lick the walls while you sweat buckets and pray the fire doesn't eat all the oxygen before your shift is over. You and 2 others take turns feeding the blaze with bundles of pine branches. The flames roar, and the rock hisses like an angry beast. Breathing is a luxury now. You press a rag to your mouth, but it barely filters the smoke. Your lungs feel like they're filling with ash. Your skin stings. Your eyes water until you can't see straight. After an hour, you stumble out of the tunnel, coughing blood. The overseer throws the bucket of water at you and says, 10 more minutes. By midday, your tunic is scorched, your hair smells like a funeral pyre, and your ears are ringing. But the wall has cracked. That means the hammer team is sent in. You're reassigned to help haul out the ore. It's heavy, jagged, hot to the touch. You carry it in baskets made of rope and animal hide, the cords biting into your shoulders. You've stopped caring about the blisters. They popped days ago. You pass the ventilation shaft. Orpheus is still there, singing softly to himself while working the crank. He's got a burn on his neck and a vacant look in his eyes. He hums a tune about birds. There are no birds down here. You haven't even seen a rat in a week. Too dry. At some point, a man from Gaul tries to escape. He bolts down a side shaft, slips past a guard, and disappears into the dark. Everyone stops. The overseers blow their whistles. The man runs for 3 minutes before falling into a pit shaft. The scream echoes for a full 5 seconds before cutting off. You never find out if he died on impact or starved at the bottom. Either way, he's not coming back. You get no break today. Not that breaks are common, but when they do happen, they feel like religious miracles. Today's miracle is a small handful of salted fish from a passing guard. It's meant as a morale booster. It smells like death, but you eat it anyway. In the afternoon, the slave next to you collapses mid-strike. His knees buckle. He falls flat. You help him sit up, but his eyes are unfocused, sunken, his lips cracked. Water, he rasps. You pour a little from your jug. He gulps greedily. He might live, he might not. You move on. The most dangerous part of the mine isn't the shafts or the smoke or the rock falls. It's the silence. When the miners stop talking, even just the grunts, the curses, you know something is wrong. That silence comes now. You freeze. The ground vibrates. You hear the creak, the sigh, then the roar. The ceiling collapses in Section D. It doesn't happen all at once, just a slow implosion, like the earth swallowing itself. Dust clouds rush down the tunnel. You hit the ground, covering your head with your arms. The screaming begins. You hear metal snap, stone split, bones shatter. When it's over, 5 men are dead. 3 more are trapped behind rubble. There's no rescue plan. We'll dig them out later, says the overseer. Everyone knows that means never. You make eye contact with a man from Egypt. He's crying silently. You both turn and pick up your tools. The day's not over. Later, as the oil lamps sputter and your body begs for rest, you pass the infirmary. A misnomer. It's a dark room with 2 straw mats and a slave with basic knowledge of plants. A man lies there with a broken arm, set poorly. Another groans from a puncture wound that's clearly infected. The healer applies a paste made of crushed herbs and spit. It probably won't help. Dinner is skipped today. Supplies ran short. You get half a bowl of broth and a warning not to complain. You go to sleep on your back, staring at the stone ceiling. You can barely remember the sky. You dream of open fields and wake to coughing. Another day begins. Your eyes burn. Your knees swell. Your hands are permanently curled from gripping tools. A fingernail has turned green. Your ribs stick out. You've aged 10 years in a month. This is life now. And you realize something terrible. You're getting used to it. You don't remember how long you've been here. That's not poetic exaggeration. It's a genuine fact. Time in an ancient Roman mine isn't measured in days or months. It's measured in wounds, in coughs, in how many people you saw alive at breakfast and dead by supper, in how many times you've pissed blood this week, in how many toenails you've lost. Maybe you've been here for a season, maybe a year, maybe several. You've lost track of your own name. It doesn't matter anymore. No one calls you by it. You're called Hey, you, number 7, or sometimes just Move. That's what you are now. A body in motion, a shoveling, hammering, choking thing, a creature who crawled into the earth and forgot to crawl out. The mines are different now, quieter. Not because the work has lessened, gods know, but because fewer voices echo through the shafts. The men are dying faster than they're being replaced. Rome is fighting wars again. When isn't it fighting wars? And fewer prisoners are being sent down. So the same skeleton crew does more, longer hours, less food, and the overseers, they don't care. A sick miner is a useless miner. A dead miner clears up a straw mat. You've now been assigned to water hauling. Your job is to carry sloshing amphorae from the surface down to the base tunnels to cool fire-set rock and give to the breathing wreckage of men they still pretend to hydrate. It's the only job that lets you glimpse the light. You climb the ladder with your jug, and for the first time in weeks, sunlight hits your face. You blink like a mole. You squint up into the open sky and feel something break inside you. A terrible, beautiful ache. You feel heat on your skin. You smell grass. You hear a bird, a real bird. And then a guard shoves you and shouts, "Back down, animal!" Down you go, into the belly of the mountain again, like a corpse retreating into its tomb. At the bottom, they found another ore seam, rich with silver. The tunnel's too narrow for tools, so they send in boys. Small bodies, barefoot, crawling on hands and knees with chisels and baskets. One slips, his basket tips. The overseer whips him hard enough to draw blood. The boy doesn't even cry. His eyes are empty. He's maybe 8 years old. You help load the carts. Silver glints through the dust. You wonder, will this coin end up in the pocket of a senator's mistress? Will it pay for a horse for some arrogant patrician's son? Will it decorate the handle of a ceremonial dagger that never sees battle? Your ribs protrude. Your hair is falling out. Your gums bleed when you chew. You piss in a corner and it burns. You step on a shard of pottery and don't even notice until someone points out the blood. Sometimes the overseers play games. They pit slaves against each other in contests. Whoever hauls the most ore gets a crust of honeyed bread. The loser gets whipped. You win once. You don't remember the bread. Only the look on the face of the man who lost. An old Greek who hasn't spoken since. Then, one morning, something strange happens. You're called by name, not a number. A name. Your name. You freeze. You turn slowly, thinking maybe you imagined it. But no, the guard repeats it. You, yes you, pack up, you're done. You don't understand. Done? What does that mean? No one gets done. They shove a wax tablet into your hand, a signature. Someone, somewhere, has paid for your release. Or maybe a mistake was made. Or maybe you've served enough time. You're unshackled, given a crust of bread and a skin of water. You're led to the surface and left there. You just stand, alone, in the open. Wind brushes your face. Your eyes stream tears from the sunlight. Your legs shake. You look back at the mine entrance, black, gaping, still growling like a hungry mouth, and you realize you lived. But here's the truth no one wants to say. You didn't escape. You left the mine, yes, but the mine didn't leave you. You'll carry it with you forever, in your lungs, in your bones, in your dreams. The cough won't stop. Your knees won't straighten. You flinch every time you hear someone shout. You panic in the dark. You can't sleep unless your back is to a wall. You walk into a village and they call you a miner, but not like it's a profession, like it's a sickness, a contamination. You stink of sweat, smoke, and grave dust. Children stare. Old women cross themselves. No one offers you a bed. You work on a farm, or as a porter, or as a beggar. But people know. They see the scars. They see the eyes. You're not like them. You're a reminder. Years pass. You grow old, if you're lucky. Your back stays bent. Your fingers never heal. The mind becomes a story you don't tell because no one wants to hear it. They want glory, not horror. Eventually, you die. Not in a shaft, but in a hut or alley or a roadside ditch. And the coins they bury you with, if you're buried at all, they come from that mine. You mind your own grave, and someone else will go down next. The empire runs on blood and rock, and there's always more blood. Imagine sailing straight into hell, with blisters. You're half frozen, half cooked, full of lice, and knee-deep in blood that isn't yours. You haven't eaten a fresh vegetable in 3 months, and your bunk smells like a fermented boot. Congratulations, you've joined a 19th century whaling ship, where dreams go to drown and noses go to die. Let's start with what got you here. Maybe you were poor, maybe you were drunk, maybe you were both. You stumbled down to the docks in New Bedford or Nantucket, lured by promises of adventure, brotherhood, and profit. But those posters left out a few details, like the months of starvation, storms, scurvy, and screaming agony you were signing up for. First lesson of the whaling life. You don't join a whaling ship, you surrender to it. You sign your name, or make an X, because literacy isn't exactly booming in your circle. And you're officially a member of the crew. What you might not realize is that you've just agreed to spend anywhere from 3 to 5 years at sea. Not weeks, not months, years. And you don't get paid a wage. You get a lay, a percentage of the profits from the oil and bone you help harvest. Your cut? Probably somewhere between 150th and 1/300th. If you survive, you step aboard your new home, a wooden coffin with sails. She's a bark or a brig, maybe 80 to 100 feet long, and she smells like old fish, fresh sweat and stale despair. The deck is slick with whale grease, because scrubbing isn't really a priority. The rigging groans overhead like a haunted forest. The sails flap like your hopes trying to escape. The crew greets you with about as much warmth as a wet handshake. Most of them haven't bathed in weeks. Some haven't spoken in days. There's the harpooner with the shark bite scar, the cook with one eye, the first mate who looks like he eats coal for breakfast. No one smiles. They size you up. Another landlubber. You're not a person. You're ballast. You're shown to your bunk, if you can call it that. It's a wooden shelf in the forecastle, the part of the ship where hope and legroom go to die. There's no mattress, just a canvas sack filled with moldy straw. The ceiling's so low you have to sleep in a fetal curl. There's one lantern swinging from a hook, giving the room the ambiance of a dungeon inside a meat locker. You stow your gear, which consists of the clothes on your back and maybe a crust of bread you forgot was in your pocket. No personal items, no fresh socks, no idea what's coming. The ship creaks, the wind whistles. You're told to get on deck, and fast. The captain appears. He's either a stern father figure or a sadistic overlord, maybe both. He surveys his new meat with narrowed eyes, says something about discipline, says something about obeying orders, says nothing about surviving. And then the ship pulls away. Land disappears. That's it. You're in. Now the real fun begins. The days blur together fast. Your first duty is scrubbing the deck, which sounds simple until you realize it involves seawater, sand, and your own frozen fingers. The deck must be kept clean, not for hygiene, but so the crew doesn't slip and die when the ship starts pitching like a drunk mule. You scrub until your hands bleed. You stop scrubbing, you get yelled at. You speak up, you get punched. It's a tight feedback loop. Then there's the food. The ship's provisions are, to put it kindly, appalling. Salt pork so old it comes with its own ecosystem. Hardtack biscuits that crunch like drywall and contain more weevils than flour. Coffee made from burnt beans and seawater. Dried apples if you're lucky. The cook, known affectionately as the slop gut, prepares every meal in a galley that resembles a condemned chimney. You eat with your hands. or with someone else's hands if you're not fast enough. Sleep comes in bursts, 4 hours at a time. Your watch dictates when you work, when you eat, and when you collapse. You're either on the first watch, middle watch, or dog watch, and none of them are good. Night watches are brutal. It's freezing. Your coat is wet. The sails are shrieking. The stars offer no comfort. You stand at the rail, gripping it with numb fingers, praying you don't fall overboard. If you do, they won't turn the ship around. Ever. Men vanish all the time. 1 second they're there. The next, just a ripple in the black water. And speaking of water, it's everywhere. Leaks in the hull, rain from above, spray from the sea. You're always damp. Always. Your skin starts to rot in strange places. Your boots never dry. Your socks disintegrate. You start to grow a fungal ecosystem between your toes. There's no doctor, just a carpenter with a saw and a bottle of rum. Then comes your first whale sighting. Someone screams, "Thar she blows," and the whole ship erupts. Chaos. The boats are lowered. Small wooden things barely bigger than bathtubs. You and 6 others cram in, grabbing oars, a harpoon, a line spool, and your last ounce of courage. You row toward a creature the size of your childhood home. You row straight into its path, aiming to stab it with a stick. That's the plan. That's whaling. That's the entire system. And it works. Sometimes. If the harpoon strikes true, the whale bolts, dragging your boat behind it in what's called a Nantucket sleigh ride. You scream, you cling, you bail water, you try not to die. The whale dives, the line runs out. If no one cuts it in time, your boat gets yanked under. Assuming you live, and that's a big assumption. You're now in the second stage, the kill. You move in close, jabbing a long lance into the whale's side. Blood fountains from its blowhole. It convulses, it fights, it screams. Yes, whales scream. It's a horrible gurgling moan that will haunt your dreams until you die of mercury poisoning. Eventually it dies. You drag the corpse back to the ship. Now the real work begins. You flense the whale, strip the blubber in long stinking strips. Then you boil it down in massive cauldrons called tripots. The fire burns constantly, fed by whale oil and rage. The decks become slick with gore. The smell is indescribable. Think burning meat, spoiled fish, and Satan's breath. It gets into your clothes, into your hair, into your soul. This is what you do, over and over, for years. Sail, spot, chase, kill, boil, repeat. And God help you if you get scurvy, or if you catch dysentery, or if you get into a fist fight with a fellow sailor and lose an eye. There are no second chances, no medical leave, just salt and time and pain. You start talking to yourself, you start naming the rats. You start forgetting what the land smells like. You develop a twitch. You grow a beard that begins to look like it could apply for its own job. And this is just the first leg of the voyage. You've still got 6,000 miles and 30 whales to go. The second week at sea, you stop gagging at the smell of boiling whale fat. That might sound like progress. It's not. It just means your nose has given up, like the rest of you. You're covered in grease, blood, salt, soot, and something you can't identify, but suspect came out of a whale's intestinal tract. You haven't washed in over a week. There's no fresh water for bathing, only briny bilge water, and even that's a luxury reserved for rinsing tools. You now officially smell like a candle factory run by demons. The novelty of life aboard has long since rotted. Your daily schedule is a cursed merry-go-round of 4-hour watches, back-breaking labor, and meals that can best be described as nutritional violence. Today's lunch, a piece of moldy hardtack and something the cook claims is salted beef. It's mostly bone and gristle. You gnaw on it like a feral dog. You pretend not to see the worm. The deck is alive with motion. The ship heaves, groans, and pitches with every breath of wind. You've stopped getting seasick because you've emptied everything inside you. All that remains is a hollow vessel of nausea and regret. You try to sleep. The forecastle is a screaming contest of snores, farts, and the occasional shout from a man stuck in a fever dream. One sailor sleeps with his eyes open, another mumbles scripture in his sleep. You lie on your back and count the lice bites. Then it happens. The lookout calls out another whale. The chaos restarts, boats lowered, harpoons readied. You're in the water before you're fully awake. You row with numb arms, salt spray hitting your face like tiny knives. The sky is gray. The sea is black. The whale is massive. The chase is long, hours. The beast breaches and dives, its tail slamming the water like a cannon shot. You row, lungs burning, arms shaking. When the harpoon finally hits, it's like plugging your fishing line into a thunderstorm. The sleigh ride begins again. The line unspools at lightning speed. One man grabs the wrong end and loses 2 fingers. You feel the boat groan, the wood bending, the ropes creaking. The whale dives. For a moment, everything goes silent. Then the line jerks and your boat slams forward, like it's being shot from a catapult. You scream. Everyone screams. Eventually, the beast tires. You approach slowly, driving lances into its side. Blood pours into the sea. It glows red in the gray light. Gulls descend in screaming hordes. The whale shudders, then stops. You tow the corpse back with aching arms. Hours later, you begin the flensing. The deck becomes a horror show. Blubber strips fall like slabs of greasy meat. The ship becomes slick. A man slips and breaks his arm. Another is nearly crushed by a falling jawbone. You keep working. You always keep working. The try-works burn all night. They're the giant iron pots where you boil the whale blubber into oil. The heat is unbearable. The smoke stings your eyes. Sparks fly. You feed the fire with whale scraps, bones, even old ropes. Anything that burns. The stench is apocalyptic. You tend the pots while sweat pours down your back. Oil splashes your arms, leaving blisters. You stir with a long pole. One slip and you fall in. It has happened before. They don't talk about it. And when the oil is rendered, it's poured into barrels. Hundreds of barrels. Your future fortune, you're told. But you've done the math. Even if you survive, your lay will barely buy a pair of boots. Weeks pass. The crew begins to change. One man talks to the rats, calls them his children. Another sharpens a spoon into a weapon. The harpooner carves scrimshaw from whale teeth. Detailed, beautiful art depicting things he'll never see again. A woman's face, a cathedral, a tree. You begin having nightmares, not of drowning, not of being eaten by whales. You dream of land, of dirt, of grass, of silence. You wake up sweating, heart racing, and realize the sea has taken something from you, something you won't get back. One storm nearly finishes you. It hits without warning, a squall that tears sails and splits masts. The ship tilts hard, 40 degrees or more. You cling to the rigging as waves crash over the deck. A barrel breaks loose and flattens a sailor. Another is swept overboard. You hear his screams fade into the wind. No one looks back. You bail water for 12 hours straight. Your hands bleed, your back spasms, the sea laughs. When it ends, you're exhausted, but the ship didn't sink. That's considered a win. The next day, the cook dies. He collapsed in the galley, face down in a pot of beans. No ceremony. They toss him over the side, wrapped in canvas. No one cries. You take his place in the galley. Congratulations. You're now responsible for feeding 30 insane men using expired pork, salt, and desperation. You cook hardtack stew. You boil whatever floats. You pretend not to notice the smell. You sleep next to the barrel of flour, which contains more beetles than grain. You lose count of the days. The ship rounds Cape Horn. Icebergs appear, vast, silent mountains. The cold is indescribable. Your breath freezes on your lips. Your fingers go numb. You have chilblains, cracked skin, and something that might be frostbite. A man loses a toe. No one flinches. You row after whales in this. Bare hands, frozen ropes, slippery decks. One day the boat overturns. 2 men drown. Another loses an ear to frost. You survive. That counts for something. The captain is getting twitchy. He hasn't spoken in days. Just stands at the helm, staring into the distance. They say he saw a white whale once. You don't know if it's true. You don't ask. You've started eating raw fish, just tearing chunks off like a sea monster. It feels normal now. Another whale, another kill, another night at the tripods lit by hellfire. You catch your reflection in the oil. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, wild hair. You barely recognize yourself, but you're still alive, and you're only halfway through the voyage. You no longer mark time by the sun or stars. You mark it by the smell of rendering days. The whale oil smoke gets thicker with each flensing, clinging to your clothes, your skin, your lungs. You cough now, a deep, gravelly sound that rattles in your chest and never quite goes away. Some men say it's the whale lung curse. Others say it's just what happens when you breathe smoke, salt, and sorrow for too long. You've forgotten what silence sounds like. Even in calm weather, there's the constant groan of the rigging, the slap of waves, the endless clatter of boots and barrels and shouting, but it's the screaming that haunts you. The whales don't die quietly. They moan, cry, thrash, and sometimes fight to the very last heartbeat. Their agony hangs in the air, echoing off the sails. It becomes a song you hum in your sleep without realizing. A new boy joined their crew 2 weeks ago, barely 14, his first voyage. He hasn't stopped vomiting since he boarded. The men call him Chum. You tried to warn him, don't drink the water, don't eat the beans. Don't sleep near the man who talks in tongues. He didn't listen. Last night, he collapsed during deck duty. Fever, the smell of rot in his breath. They moved him to the storage hold. He probably won't make it. You've begun talking to the oil barrels. They're the only ones who listen. You lean against them during your off-watch and whisper nonsense. Childhood memories, nonsense rhymes, threats. You know it's madness, but it's better than listening to the shrieking of the tryworks or the dull drumbeat of your own heartbeat ticking like a countdown. One of the crew has started carving Bible verses into the mast with a fishhook. He thinks the ship is cursed. He's not wrong. Another man threw himself overboard 2 nights ago. Said he saw lights in the sea, voices, maybe mermaids, maybe madness. Either way, he's gone. The captain said nothing. The first mate muttered, "One less lay to divide," and everyone went back to chipping blubber off the whale carcass. You're bleeding from your gums now. Scurvy, no lemons, no hope. The doctor, if you can call him that, gave you a spoonful of vinegar and told you to chew rope for fiber. You smiled through blackened teeth and thanked him. Your boots are rotting from the inside out. Every step is a swamp. Your socks haven't been dry in 6 weeks. One of your toenails fell off during a harpoon drill. You stuck it back in your boot. Didn't want to litter. A storm hits as you round the horn again. Wind shrieking like banshees. Sails tear. Men scream. The sea turns vertical. You're lashed to the mast, praying the ropes hold. Lightning strikes the mainmast. The captain just laughs. Your hands are blistered from pulling ropes through frozen iron. You scream at the ocean. The ocean screams back. In the aftermath, the cook's replacement is dead, crushed under a falling cask. You're reassigned to galley duty again, boiling seawater for soup and praying no one notices the lack of protein. The rats are disappearing. You think you know why. The ship is running low on everything. Food, tools, sanity. The harpoon heads are rusting. The flensing knives are dull. The rope is frayed. The sails are patched with clothing and prayer. You flense another whale. The deck floods with blood. The gulls scream above. One dive bombs and tears a strip of flesh from your arm. You slap it away and keep working. A man goes blind from staring into the tripod flames too long. Another loses his hand to the winch. Another tries to eat the lamp oil. Everyone pretends nothing is wrong. You start seeing things. A tree, a woman, a chair, all of them floating on the horizon like mirages. You blink and they're gone. You blink again and they're back. The sea is playing tricks on you. You try not to look at it anymore. The captain calls for a cleaning. That means turning the crew loose on the lower decks with vinegar and rags to scrub out the rot. You find things in the dark that don't belong on a ship. A jawbone, a tooth, a pair of boots with feet still in them. You say nothing. You clean. You dream of whales now. Not majestic, gentle beasts, but monstrous eyes staring at you from the deep. You dream you're inside one, Jonah style. You dream you never left port, and this has all been a hallucination caused by spoiled cabbage. You wake up to find yourself covered in oil and surrounded by strangers. You kill another whale, then another, then another. You've lost track of the count. 50, 70? Each one feeds the fire. Each one costs you a piece of yourself. Your harpooner coughs blood. Your oarmate passes out mid-row. You shake him awake with a slap. He smiles, missing 3 teeth, and mutters something in Portuguese. You start carving scrimshaw, not for art, not for trade, just to remind yourself your hands can still do something that doesn't end in blood. You carve a bird, a tree, a human face. You forget who it's supposed to be. One man tries to mutiny. He screams about the ship being a coffin. The captain shoots him in the gut and throws the body overboard. It's not the first, won't be the last. You throw up blood one morning. Everyone claps. It means you're still alive enough to vomit. You catch a fever. It burns for 3 days. You sweat through your clothes. You hallucinate land, trees, a breeze. You wake to find a shipmate stuffing hardtack in your mouth. You bite his finger. He thanks you for being lucid. You pass a ghost ship. No lights, no flags, just a derelict whaler adrift, sails tattered, deck empty. No one speaks as it floats by. No one waves, no one investigates. It disappears behind the fog like a warning. Your lay is up to 2/278. You've earned about $6 if you make it home alive, which is not guaranteed. The sun sets and the ocean goes still. You can see stars. It's beautiful. You almost cry. Then someone farts in their sleep and the spell is broken. You don't remember what your voice used to sound like. You only know what it sounds like now. Raspy, cracked, barely human. It's the voice of a man who screamed himself hoarse during storms, shouted over tripod fires, and begged the ocean not to take him. It's been 2.5 years. You're no longer sure if you're 23 or 33. Doesn't matter. You look 60. Your skin is permanently tanned and cracked like old leather. You've got scars you can't explain. Your fingernails are blackened. You've got a limp. You don't remember how you got it. The ship has grown smaller, not because it shrunk, but because you now know every inch of it, every board, every leak, every hiding place. You could walk it blindfolded. In fact, you once did. It was a dare. You won a crust of bread for it. It wasn't stale, which was a miracle. The captain doesn't speak anymore. He mostly stares, into the water, into the sky, into his mug. He doesn't even hunt whales now. That's left to the first mate, who has slowly developed the twitch of a man who is either haunted by ghosts or considering becoming one. Today, you wake up and there's a dead whale already roped to the ship. No one remembers catching it. No one cares. You just grab a flensing tool and start carving. Your mind is a fog of muscle memory. Cut here, pull there, avoid slipping, avoid the eye. You've learned never to look whales in the eye. You boil the blubber. It splashes. You don't even flinch anymore. The burn blisters instantly. You keep stirring. Your food now consists of boiled salted pork, hardtack, and whale meat. Yes, whale. The cook, now a teenager who lost the draw, has started frying it in its own fat. It's stringy, greasy, and vaguely gelatinous, but you eat it like it's a banquet. You've stopped fearing death. Now you fear port, because returning means dealing with life, with people, with crowds and noise and mirrors. You haven't seen your reflection in over a year. When you finally catch it in the polished surface of a ladle, you drop it. You thought it was someone else. Your name barely registers when someone says it. You respond more quickly to hey or oi or you filthy dog. Land is finally spotted after 36 months. The coast is a mirage. You think it's a trick, a joke, another hallucination, but it's real. You're headed back. Your voyage is ending. That's supposed to be good news. It's not. The crew grows restless. Some are joyful, some weep, some make dark jokes, others go silent. You find yourself angry, not because you're going home, but because the sea is letting you go. Like it's done with you, like you weren't even worth keeping. You dock. It's awkward. The land sways under your feet. Your legs don't trust flat ground. You walk like you're still on a rolling deck. You smell trees, flowers, fresh bread. Your brain can't process it. You get your pay. After deductions, ship supplies, fines, food, you receive exactly $43.17. For 3 years of blood, fire, and death, you buy a pair of boots, a coat, and a beer. You're broke again. You look for a place to sleep. The inns are full. You curl up behind a fish warehouse and rest your head on a coil of rope. It feels normal, too normal. A woman walks by and flinches. She calls you a vagrant. You nod. You are. You spend the next week wandering. People speak too fast. Everything smells wrong. The buildings are too tall. The beds are too soft. You sleep on the floor. You hear rumors of another ship leaving for the South Seas. A whaling vessel. They need crew. You tell yourself you'll never do it again. Then you realize you have nowhere else to go. The sea didn't just break you. It rewrote you. You walk back to the docks and sign your name. Imagine waking up every morning, donning a leather bird mask filled with herbs, strapping yourself into a waxed robe that smells like boiled goat, and walking straight into a town where everyone is either dying, dead, or about to accuse you of being in league with the devil. Welcome to your new job. 17th century plague doctor, arguably history's most unfortunate mix of physician, undertaker, and human air freshener. You never wanted to be a plague doctor. Maybe you studied a little medicine. Maybe you apprenticed under a barber surgeon who was better with scissors than science. Maybe you were a priest who fainted during last rites and got reassigned. It doesn't matter. You didn't dream of this. No child looks at a masked, leather-clad man with soot-stained gloves and thinks, "That's who I want to be when I grow up." But here you are. You arrive in a small city, somewhere in Italy, France, or the Holy Roman Empire. You're greeted not with parades or fanfare, but by silence. Deafening silence. The city gate is locked. A bell tolls from somewhere inside. The air smells like sweat, vinegar, decay, and something unholy. You knock. A man on the wall looks down and throws you a rope. "Don't touch the gate," he yells. They smeared it with infected pig fat to keep outsiders out. You smile weakly, wrap the rope around your waist, and let yourself be hoisted in like a sack of regret. Welcome to the job. Your lodging is provided. That's the good news. The bad news is it's in the old jailhouse because nobody else wants you near them. You get a bed made of straw, a pot to piss in, and 2 meals a day. Usually boiled root vegetables and bread hard enough to deflect musket balls. You share the building with rats, who are ironically better respected than you. Day 1, you suit up. It takes 20 minutes to get everything on. First the thick wool undershirt already stained with last week's sweat. Then the waxed overcoat, designed to repel miasma, or bad air. Over that goes a leather apron, gloves, boots, and a broad-brimmed hat that makes you look like a depressed wizard. Finally the mask, the famous bird mask, 2 glass eye holes, a long curved beak filled with herbs, lavender, mint, cloves, and camphor. Why? Because you believe disease travels through bad smells, and if you can just overpower the plague stench with enough rosemary, maybe, just maybe, you won't die screaming. You walk into town, people scatter, children cry, doors slam shut. One old woman throws a bucket of holy water at you. You are not a welcome sight. You are the harbinger. If you're here, it means death is here too. Your first patient is already dead. You find him in his home, slumped over a table, his mouth frozen open in a silent scream. His wife sits in the corner, rocking back and forth, covered in boils. She's still breathing, but barely. You try to speak to her. She mutters about demons. You nod as if you understand. You're supposed to write this all down. You pull out your notebook and scratch a few Latin phrases. Febris magna, bubonis ingentes, spiritus pestilentia. You don't actually know what most of that means, but it sounds official. Then you move on. Your next stop is a plague pit, a massive trench on the edge of town, half filled with corpses. You're expected to inspect the bodies, look for patterns, buboes, blackened limbs, bleeding gums. The smell is biblical. You vomit into your mask. The cloves do not help. You poke a few bodies with your cane. That's your main tool. An ivory cane, not for walking, but for prodding people without touching them. You're basically a medieval version of someone poking a carcass with a selfie stick. One of the corpses moves. Turns out he's not dead. Not yet. He gasps, grabs your leg, begs for water. You jump back. You weren't trained for this. You were barely trained at all. You whisper a prayer, hand him a cloth soaked in vinegar, and tell him he'll be fine. He won't be. Back in town, you get requests. A baker wants you to examine his son, who has a fever. A priest begs you to bless a church full of the sick. A magistrate demands account of the dead. A woman screams that her husband came back from the grave. You run out of vinegar. There are no hospitals. Only pest houses, barns, or old churches filled with straw mats and coughing people. No nurses, no medicine, just you, your cane, and your ever-thinning patients. You try a treatment. You lance a bubo with your scalpel. It bursts like a grape. You squeeze it, hoping to drain the bad humors. The patient passes out. You sew the wound with twine and hope for the best. He dies 3 hours later. You write treatment unsuccessful and move on. That night, you dream of birds. Giant birds pecking at your chest. Your mask melts. The beak becomes part of your face. You wake up screaming. There's a knock at your door. A city guard stands outside with a letter. The mayor has died. You are now the most senior official in town. You're expected to organize a response. Quarantines, burnings, public prayers, funeral arrangements. You look at the guard and ask if he's serious. He is. You hold a town meeting. No one comes. You walk the streets with a bell, ringing it and shouting in Latin. No one understands Latin anymore. You switch to German, then Italian, then just shouting. Eventually a crowd forms. They keep 20 feet away. You announce that the town is under lockdown. No one in, no one out. Violators will be whipped or exiled. Someone throws a cabbage at your head. It misses. You return to your cell and mark another tally in your notebook. Day 3, 37 dead. 3 boilings, 1 attempted lynching, 0 respect. You try to write to the university that trained you, if you can call it that. You ask for supplies, gloves, books, a second plague doctor, anyone. You receive no reply. Then the rats start dying. You find piles of them in the alleys, twisted and bleeding. You should be relieved, but you've seen this before. When the rats die, the humans are next. You say a prayer. You walk the streets, you ring your bell, and people whisper behind closed doors. The plague doctor has come. We must already be dead. You've stopped bothering to clean the blood off your boots. It's not that you've grown used to it. It's that there's no point. Every street, every alley, every bed you visit is a soaked canvas of filth, infection, and bad decisions. If your shoes aren't wet with blood, they're wet with vomit, or pus, or something leaking from a wall you're afraid to examine too closely. You get called to the tannery today. The smell hits you 3 blocks away. It's not the usual chemical rot of stretched hides and dog urine. It's new, wet, human. The workers are dropping like flies. One has collapsed into a vat of lime, and his body is now described as tenderized. You nod grimly and declare it unholy. No one argues. A priest walks by, holding a crucifix in one hand and a dead chicken in the other. He's muttering Latin and sprinkling vinegar. He sees you and nods like your old war buddies. You both know this is theater. There's no cure. You're just stalling the inevitable. The town tries to keep up appearances. Markets reopen. Bread prices skyrocket. Someone starts selling plague amulets made from garlic and chicken bones. You want to scream. You want to shake people and say, "Stop licking frogs and praying to mold. That's not medicine." But you don't. You just ring your little bell and keep walking. Someone's stolen your cane. You now prod the sick with a ladle you borrowed from the monastery. It works fine, a little too flexible. You've named it Dr. Spoon. You talk to it when no one's looking. On the 5th day, your mask cracks. You notice it while treating a young man with buboes the size of apples. One sharp sneeze, and suddenly you smell it. The raw iron stink of blood. That's not supposed to happen. The herbs in the beak are your only defense against miasma, and now the barrier's been breached. You patch it with wax in desperation. It holds. For now. You develop a rash. Is it plague? Is it fleas? Is it just stress manifesting on your skin like angry punctuation? You scratch until you bleed. A nun sees it and makes the sign of the cross. She tells you to sleep. You laugh in her face. Sleep? Your mattress is stuffed with straw, riddled with mites. You share it with 2 fleas, 1 rat, and whatever the 17th century version of depression is. You try to close your eyes and dream only of fire. You wake up gasping, your mouth dry, your heart pounding like a funeral drum. You go to the river for air. You see bodies floating. 2 men are fishing with a net, trying to catch them before they drift too far downstream. They wave and joke that this one looks rich. You walk away. You are summoned by the mayor's widow. She's locked herself in her parlor, surrounded by candles, crucifixes, and jars of rosewater. Her servant has pustules on her neck and smells like cheese left in the sun. You explain the situation. The widow insists it's a bad cold. You nod and prescribe her crushed emeralds and beetle wine. She pays you in gold. You use the money to buy bread for the pest house. The pest house is a symphony of coughs. It's run by 2 nuns, 4 terrified teenagers, and 1 man who claims to be an alchemist. He smells like sulfur and insists the key to survival is burning the air. You let him keep talking because it's either that or despair. He lights incense, throws herbs on hot coals, and chants. The patients die anyway. Your job is to record the deaths, name, symptoms, duration, outcome. Except most have no name, or they have 3, or their families are all dead, and there's no one left to confirm their identity. You begin writing things like tall woman, missing teeth, cursed, and boy with eyes too bright, possibly holy, died screaming. You drop your ledger in a puddle of bile. You just close it and walk away. You hear rumors of a neighboring town that tried to quarantine by walling itself off completely. No one allowed in or out. It worked for 3 weeks. Then someone sneezed during mass and the whole town collapsed like a house of poorly sanitized cards. Back home, your own body begins to protest. You've lost weight. Your fingers tremble. You get dizzy standing. Your urine is the color of cooked wine. You pretend it's fine. You pretend you're strong. You pretend your left armpit isn't swelling. You burn your own bedsheets just in case. One day you return to your cell and find a letter. It is sealed with wax and smells like cinnamon. A message from a colleague in another city. He describes a new treatment involving toad bile and shaved nutmeg. He also mentions something called plague angels, children with pale eyes who wander the streets predicting deaths. You set the letter on fire. You walk into a house and find a man dead at his desk. He's surrounded by books, Pliny, Galen, Avicenna. His final note says, "Maybe this isn't humors. Maybe this is something else." You take his candle and leave the rest. That night, you argue with your mask. You tell it you hate it, that you never asked for this, that you should have become a brewer like your uncle. The mask says nothing. You throw it against the wall. Then you panic and patch it back together with string and pig grease. The town begins burning homes. If someone dies in a house, the whole place is boarded up and torched. You're expected to watch. Sometimes there are people still alive inside. You protest. They ignore you. You start carrying a small bottle of laudanum to offer the trapped. It's not mercy, but it's close. You walk past a church where a man is whipping himself in the street. He believes suffering will appease God. He's covered in welts and singing a hymn through bloodied lips. A crowd gathers. You turn your back and walk away. You see a mother carrying her sick child to the river, weeping. She tells you she's taking him to the water spirits. You don't argue. You know she's already lost everything else. You help dig a grave for a midwife who used to bring life into this town. Now she rests among hundreds of others, priests, children, merchants, beggars, all leveled by the same invisible monster. You stop believing in bad air. You stop believing in anything. The city begins to smell like fire, vinegar, and incense. It's the scent of failure. One day, a noble arrives. He's in a coach carried by servants who haven't seen sunlight in weeks. He demands to see you. He wants to know how his people are doing. You show him the pest house. He throws up in his hat. He leaves within the hour. You walk through the marketplace. It's empty. A dog gnaws on something unmentionable. A boy watches you from a rooftop, his eyes sunken. You wave. He disappears. You find a note pinned to your door. It says, "Healer or Harbinger." You don't answer. You stop counting the dead. You tried. For the first month, you scribbled names, ages, symptoms, last words. Then the pages blurred, the names repeated, and the cries all started sounding the same. You switched to tally marks. Then you stopped even that. Now, the only thing you track is your mask. How many times it's cracked, how many herbs you've stuffed in the beak, how many mornings you've whispered into it. Just one more day. The town feels hollow. Doors swing on hinges with no one behind them. Streets echo when you walk, like the earth forgot it had inhabitants. You open a bakery and find loaves petrified mid-rising, a body slumped beside the oven, hands still dusted with flour. You take a roll, you eat it, it tastes like ash. You've developed a cough. It could be the plague, it could be the smoke. It could be the despair lodged deep in your chest like a second set of lungs. You start talking to the statues. There's a stone saint in the square, Saint Roch, patron of plagues. He's got a dog at his side and an eternally chiseled expression of beatific calm. You hate him. You ask him what his secret is. He doesn't answer. Someone nails a sign to your door. No more bodies. You're not sure if it's a warning or a request. You walk through the wealthier part of town. The plague has found them too. Silk sheets soaked in bile, gold rings on blackened fingers. A woman begs you to bleed the ghosts out of her husband. He's been dead for 3 days. You nod, pretend to perform a ritual, and leave her crying over a corpse dressed in pearls. You meet another doctor. Well, sort of. He's a barber who's renamed himself Dr. Vitalis. He wears a crow mask made of papier-mâché and smells strongly of absinthe. He insists he's discovered a cure using powdered mummy, owl urine, and mercury. You ask how many patients he's cured. He says, none yet, but soon. You walk away faster than usual. The grave diggers are drunk, every day. They're the only people in town more wretched than you. They sing ribald songs while hauling bodies. One waves at you with a severed hand. You don't know if it's a joke. You don't want to know. You find a man in the square preaching that the plague is a punishment for dancing. He wears a sackcloth robe and no shoes. His eyes are wide, his teeth are few. He carries a drum. You ask what he wants. He says, stillness and bloodletting, but mostly stillness. You ring your bell and keep walking. You treat a woman with boils on her tongue. She can't speak, only point. Her children are already dead in the next room. You nod solemnly, smear her lips with a paste of vinegar and crushed onion, and hope it eases the pain. She dies anyway. You take a dried flower from her table. You don't know why. You carry it for days until it crumbles. There's an explosion at the apothecary. He was mixing something new. Turpentine, sulfur, and lead powder. Now he's spread across the back alley in a constellation of charred meat and shattered bottles. You retrieve a half-melted pestle from the rubble. It might be useful. Someone finally asks how you are doing. It's a child, maybe 6 years old. She tugs on your coat and says, "Are you sad, Birdman?" You don't know how to answer. Before you can speak, her mother yells and drags her away, like your sorrow is contagious. You attend a funeral. Your own. Well, not exactly. But someone in town sculpts a little wooden figure, puts it in a tiny coffin, and buries it with a sign that reads, "Here lies the plague crow. May he never return." You stand over the grave and feel something you can't name. Gratitude? Envy? You visit the monastery. The monks are burying one of their own. They invite you in, offer you bread and wine. You hesitate. It's the first kindness you've seen in weeks. You eat, drink, sit silently among the prayers. One monk offers to wash your feet. You decline. You're afraid of what he'll find. You try to write a letter to your family. The words don't come. You forget their faces. You draw a sketch of your mask instead. Label the herbs inside. Thyme, camphor, mint, desperation. You hear rumors of a cure from Spain. Some say it's red wine and garlic. Others say it's goat bile mixed with moonlight. You try it on a patient. He dies more politely than the others. Progress? You see a man trying to dig his own grave. He's weak, wheezing, but determined. You ask if he wants help. He says, No, I've earned this." You let him finish. You don't know what else to do. You return to the pest house. 3 new patients. One has the Black Death. One has the dancing plague and won't stop twitching. The last claims to be immortal and offers to transfer the illness into you. You decline politely. He dies mid-sentence. You burn your clothes again. Even the leather robe. You're down to a spare tunic and a prayer. The town gives you a new mask, carved from wood and painted black. It fits badly. The eye holes are crooked. You wear it anyway. That night you dream of birds again. Not crows this time. Doves. They lift you off the ground, into the sky, above the smoke and screams. Then you realize they're vultures, and you're bleeding. You wake up to a rat chewing your boot. You let it finish. You stop saying goodbye to people. There's no point. They don't make it. Not even the ones who looked strong yesterday, or who swore they'd be better by Sunday. They're gone now, reduced to smoldering heaps beneath lime, or dragged away before dawn by men who no longer bother to wear gloves. Your name has changed. They don't call you doctor anymore, if they ever did. Now you're just the crow, or mask, or him. Mothers hush their children when you pass. The brave ones throw rotting apples. One man spits and calls you a ghoul. You nod. He's not wrong. Your skin no longer fits quite right. You itch constantly. You smell like vinegar, ash, and grief. Your fingers are always stained. Blood, soot, bile, ink. Your nails are splitting. You tried to chew one off yesterday and cracked a tooth. You laughed. It sounded like a scream. You treat a man who stabbed himself in the leg. He says it's to let the sickness out. You explain that bleeding doesn't work. He begs you to drain the demons. You bandage him up, give him a clove-stuffed rag to chew, and whisper that he's not alone. He dies that night, smiling. You pass by a field full of bonfires. They say it's to purify the air. Really, it's to burn bodies. The smoke rises high into the sky and paints the clouds a bruised gray. You wonder if heaven can see it. You wonder if it matters. The town has gone mostly silent. Even the whales have grown quiet. There are fewer people left to scream. You meet a dog with human eyes. At least that's what it feels like. He follows you for 3 days. You feed him scraps. You name him Dr. Two. He barks only at clergy and rats. On the 4th day, he's gone. You don't look for him. The grave diggers have stopped burying. Now they stack. The pits are full. The earth too tired to open its mouth again. You find a note nailed to the church door. Let the sea take the rest. Someone is dragging bodies to the river. It smells like a butcher's trough. You try to read a medical text. You can't focus. The words blur. All you see are illustrations. A bubo swelling like a plum. A cross-section of a lung, a diagram of a face twisted in death. You tear out a page and use it to light a lantern. You develop a limp. It started as a blister, then an infection. You clean it daily with brandy, wrap it with linen, whisper to it like it's a friend. If it spreads, you'll cut it off. You already sharpened the saw, just in case. Someone hangs garlic on your door. It's a peace offering, or a threat. You eat it anyway. You see a family performing a funeral for a doll. Their daughter died weeks ago, but the body was taken by the authorities. So they built her again, stuffed dress, porcelain face, cotton curls. They weep as they set her afloat on a wooden raft down the canal. You don't interrupt. You get drunk on church wine. You don't even like wine, but it numbs the edges. You sit in the pulpit wearing your mask, swaying, mumbling Latin that doesn't mean anything anymore. A bat flutters past. You toast to it. You find a survivor, a woman who claims to have never gotten sick. She says it's because she drinks only rainwater and sleeps with a clove under her tongue. You ask her to write it down. She says she can't write. You nod solemnly. She'll be dead by next week. The bells stop ringing. At first, you think someone finally fixed them. Then you realize the bell ringers are dead. You begin to forget colors. Everything is gray now. Gray sky, gray mud, gray faces. Even the firelight seems pale. You remember blue once. Maybe in someone's eyes. You try to picture it. You can't. One morning, you wake and your mask is gone. You panic. You overturn furniture, tear apart your room. You find it sitting perfectly centered on your desk, facing the window. You don't remember putting it there. You sit across from it for an hour, just staring. You finally cry. Not for the dead, not for the dying, but because your hands shake too much to tie the mask straps. You curse your own weakness. You whisper, "Not yet." The mask says nothing. You visit the town records. The clerk is dead. You go through the books yourself. You find your name, scribbled months ago under medical staff assigned. Next to it is a red mark, a check, a cross. You stare at it for a long time. Then you close the book. You leave your final note. A letter addressed to no one. A confession, a chronicle, a joke. You write, "Tried cloves, didn't help. Tried vinegar, just made me smell like salad. Tried prayers, nothing answered. Tried hope, that died first." You sign it with a drawing of your mask. Then you put it on one last time and walk into the street because someone is always screaming, and you are the only one left to listen.